Hey everyone, Temporal here, and we have some news today. Coming out of E3, we do get to know that Diablo 2's remake. This is a beloved game for many people, something that they grew up with, one of the things that really helped put Blizzard's name more firmly on the map for a generation, Diablo 2. And their remake is going to go ahead and be available on both PC and the Xbox Series, the Xbox universe at this point, on September 23rd of this year. So that's something we're coming up on. Good 3 months away there, relatively soon, and good stuff there. So that's sort of the big news, the interesting thing, at least I think the most interesting thing that we've seen, come out so far today from the E3 stuff. But I wanted to talk about that a little bit more because while it's really cool that, hey, we're seeing a game, it's beloved by many, it's something that people are going to want to go back and play for a bit. I think that's unfortunately where it stops. So I look at Diablo 2 and I expect that this will be more successful than, say, the Warcraft 3 Reforged re release was. Um, but I think that's mostly going to be off the back of it not being a train wreck. At least we hope it's not a train wreck. Because we have to talk about Blizzard's recent re releases. And when it comes to Blizzard re releasing their fan favorites, their nostalgia games, we've had really two different tiers of success so far. We've had our World of Warcraft Classic tier of release. We've had our Warcraft 3 Reforged tier of release, and then we had the StarCraft re-release as well, and that was fine. But what happened with the WoW one was that was very well received. There were of course some server issues when they went live, but that was well received. They made significantly more money and had significantly more interest in that than they expected. And yes, that even long after they got over there, you guys don't actually want classic, even much more right up to release date, they were surprised by how much interest they had there, and that did quite successful for them. And they have now, really just a couple weeks ago, released their TBC classic remake. And while I don't know the numbers on that, that also looks like it's been successful, though perhaps not quite as successful out the gate as the vanilla classic one. Then we had Warcraft 3 Reforged, and that was a train wreck. Like, that was absolutely a train wreck. It was supposed to have different features, cinematics remade, all sorts of stuff. Just didn't happen. Had all sorts of DC issues on the first day, much beyond what you would expect, which you'd be a little more forgiven for on an MMO. Warcraft 3 Reforged just didn't really release very well, and they were fixing issues on that for at least 6 months afterwards. The thing was barely playable for a good couple months there. I exaggerate slightly, but really not by very much. That was not very well received at all. So that's something that we look at and go, okay, well, where are we going to fall on this scale with Diablo 2? And if we look at Diablo 2, our news stories on it, we don't have very much to learn from our news stories here. It's getting nicely upgraded console release, Xbox X Series and Xbox One, as well as PC, September 23rd. Upgraded version will include 4K visuals and up to 60 frames per second. Yep, that's about what we'd expect. You can pick your class. There's going to be a beta where you can't use the Diablo 2 expansion classes, but you can use all of the original classes. We know how betas work in this day and age of gaming. The betas that the public has any chance of getting into aren't real betas. They aren't really testing anything. They're just marketing events. So whatever, that's fine. Whatever we see in the beta will be very close to what we actually get in the game. But then we go, okay, what is actually going to happen here? Because my question becomes, will it be fumbled? And I don't think the release will be fumbled the way that Warcraft 3 Reforged was. I am betting against that level of fumble, but my concern is more, what level of interest will this game continue to have and how popular will it be? I think a lot of people have really good memories of playing Diablo 2, and Diablo 2 was an amazing game for its time. I remember playing me some Diablo 2, nice loot grinder there, moving on, playing some PSO from there. Yeah, I liked this type of gameplay. These were fun. But this all was played in an era before grinding became a dirty word. There was an era in video gaming where players were quite happy to come home from work, come home from school, go do their grinding, go beat Diablo for the bajillionth time, go beat Bale for the bajillionth time, do their Act 3 runs, whatever the case may be, and just grind it to get better and better gear. But get better and better gear to do what? They get their better and better gear so that they could get better and better gear. Well, are we competing on timed runs here? Are we competing excessively in PvP? I mean, it has PvP. You can do timed runs, but that level of competition certainly didn't exist back in the day. That's not what people are really going to be picking this up to go do. So my worry with this is, what is the audience going to look like from a longer term? And you don't, on a re-release, need a super long-term audience. That's not super important. But if you want this to be more than just a quick cash grab, you would like some level of, hey, people are going to play this. On the flip side, we do see that Diablo 2, even in Twitch numbers and viewership, hangs out higher than you might expect this many years later. It can hang out as a top 20 game without too much trouble. So that is the thing. But when it comes to this, what are we getting in terms of new features? Because if we're looking at this, if we're just looking at, we're going to make it better from a graphic standpoint, we're going to go up to 4K, 60 frames per second here. It's one of these things where, again, grinding used to be fun for people. Sorry, I didn't finish that thought. But it got worse as we saw microtransactions. As microtransactions and pay to win worked their way into games, it sort of poisoned the well that was grinding. Grinding was something that people used to sort of enjoy, at least in limited extent. Like, hey, we can just casually do this. It's relaxing forever, and that's fine. It doesn't require super active, engaging. It doesn't require like super high competitive. You don't have to be firing at 100% at all times the way you do in, say, competitive gaming and something like Overwatch, since we talk mostly about Overwatch on this channel, where if you're not firing on all your cylinders, you might not want to play because you're not going to do pretty well. Something that's more grindy based, well, that you can do when you're not firing on all cylinders and can be relaxing. But that well was sort of poisoned over the years, long since the original Diablo 2, by microtransactions, by so many games that were released on cell phones and then later on consoles that were, hey, you're going to play this game. This game is going to potentially be fun, but then we're intentionally going to make the experience worse and let you buy your way through it, let you buy experience passes, let you buy things that increase the drop rate for gear, and we're going to make it so that if you don't do these things, rather than maybe sort of a somewhat enjoyable grinding experience, your rates, your returns on grinding are just going to be so incredibly tiny that you're absolutely going to hate it. And I think doing too much of this for the gamer population at large has caused them to be even less tolerant of grinding than they were before. When before grinding was something that was okay, now it's something that is just, this is absolutely painful, and we don't want almost any of it. And that's part of why today's popular games aren't things like Diablo 2, PSO. They're more competitive games that are much less about grinding and much more about, hey, you're going to be on, you're going to do it, you're going to play a shooter. Right. Invent the problem, then sell the solution. You got it. We made grinding unfun, and then we sold, hey, have this to skip some of the grinding, to make the grinding more enjoyable. Or, you can do the same thing with gotchas would be an example of this, where it's the, oh, you want to play, what is the gotcha that's popular right now? I mean, I remember Fire Emblem Heroes was popular, but the one right now, Genshin Impact, is the popular one. Where, okay, you can grind to get a bunch of orbs to summon or whatever, but there's really not going to be enough. You're going to eventually get to a point where it's like, okay, you're playing forever to make your things just a little bit better. But if you spend some money, it'll get way better. So we've sort of, again, like I said, poisoned the well on this one. We took our poison. We have our, I cannot draw a skull, but I'll try. We took our skull and crossbones, and we poisoned the well here. So I don't think grinding is going to be as well received, which means I worry about Diablo 2. So what do we have in terms of new features in Diablo 2? It could be that like a speedrunning type thing, or, and by speedrunning, I don't necessarily mean beginning the game to the end, though that could be a thing, but I more mean like how fast can you clear all of the hardest difficulty mode or all of the final act. You might see something like that, or you might see PvP get a real resurrection, but to my knowledge, PvP wasn't really a super, super serious thing. It's just not well enough balanced between the classes in the original Diablo 2. So it'll be a question of if that gets more popular. So my question when I saw this was, hey, if grinding just isn't as popular anymore, if this game is going to stick around, are we getting any changes? Are we getting anything that's going to make it better? And I went back and I looked. I did a little bit of digging into the past here for previous releases of information on this. And we can see the line of this is not a remake. Here, let me zoom in a little bit for you guys. Here we have our line of this is not a remake, and then they go on to tell us how it's a remake. I mean, they can say it's a remaster, but it's a remake. Because what we're looking at here is, as we look at this, a lot new in Diablo 2, 3D engine. So you're using a different 3D engine to still make it look 2D, but that's going to make it perform a little better, maybe. Okay, we'll see. We heard a lot about this with Warcraft 3, and that went very poorly with redoing the cutscenes. Didn't happen. Dolby surround sound. Yeah, I would hope that you'd upgrade the sound here, but again, we're just in remaster territory. Convenience of a shared item stash and integrated BattleNet friends list. Convenience of a shared item stash is like, okay, so between my characters, rather than having to use someone else, get a friend to hold my items to move them from one character to another, I can send them between my characters on my stash. Like, yes, that's a change, but that's not like compelling gameplay. That's not going to cause people to play the game for another 100 hours, another 10 hours, another 30 hours than they would have anyways. So again, this looks like to me a quick, hey, Diablo 2 releases, got a lot of people stop by for the quick nostalgia trip, and then they're gone on their next thing, and it's just a quick, again, cash grab, which I don't totally hate because, hey, it gives people access to a game that is actually hard to play right now. If you go try to play the old Diablo 2, you have to use extra stuff to get onto the servers and such. So I don't hate that, but we're just doing a remaster of a game that I would have. We're doing a remaster of a game that is like an online, always-on game, which isn't the same to me as doing a remaster of like a one-time playthrough game. So these are the sort of types of games that you expect to last longer. At least with how I consume video games, I expect this type of game to last longer. So we've got that. That's the first real change that we've seen. And then the integrated BattleNet friends list. I mean, you'd expect that to happen on anything that's released today, and that's not really a favor to us. That's a, hey, we want to keep you in our integrated system. We want to keep you playing games for longer. We want you to see when your friends are playing so that you'll go play with them, so that you'll see, oh, they're checking out Diablo 2 while you're over here playing, I don't know, WoW BC, or while you're over here playing Overwatch, or while you're over here playing Hearthstone. So now you'll spend money to go play Diablo 2 with them. I mean, this has never really been about much beyond, hey, we want you to see what your friends are doing so that you'll spend money to go join them, so that you'll stay in our ecosystem longer, playing more. And then that's it. Like, that's it. Again, this is from April, so this isn't that much prior in terms of what's new here. And then if we go to today's release information, we see, hey, all we really got is 4K visuals, 60 FPS, when the beta is going to be, and when the actual release date is. So I'm not super impressed, to be perfectly honest, and I worry that this is going to be sort of okay, people stop by, people play it for a little bit, and then they're sort of done. But you guys tell me. There's certainly room for a counter argument of no, Diablo 2 does reasonably well on Twitch for how, more than reasonably well on Twitch for how old the game is. Clearly there's a hunger to play it. People also went back and played a bunch of Diablo 2 before Diablo 3 came out, and people certainly liked Diablo 2 more than Diablo 3 in the grand scheme of things. So is this enough? Are people going to stick around and play this game for a long time? Is there a real hungry, sizable community that is really going to enjoy this one? Or is this going to be just a quick, hey, I remember playing that, hey, this isn't quite as fun as I remember because it's a loot grinder, it's grinding, and grinding isn't really fun in 2021. We again ruined that with microtransactions such. I want to hear what you guys have to think. If you guys have thoughts, by the way, and you're watching this as a video in the future, the best way to catch these live is to join my Discord in the description below. Become a watcher, then you'll get pings that by getting a role, then you'll get pings when I go live, and you can be here as part of this discussion. Okay, let's take a look here. So Crunch says grinding is one of those things that has become a more niche audience, I'd say. Like for Warframe, that's a game signified solely by its grind, and the player base has been on a steady decline, if I remember correctly for it. That sounds about right, yeah. invent the problem, then sell the solution. People still play Korean MMOs. They do. That's true. There's a bit of an industry there. It's not selling to Western audiences, though. Well, Western audiences. I should be careful with that. It's not selling to U.S. audiences, though. We're mostly looking at with that. Hey, you're selling to Korea. You're selling to China, and there's a market there, but if you look at how we do pricing on things, you can certainly sell your game for more dollars, your microtransactions for more dollars with US consumers than you can with Chinese consumers. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe this is, hey, we're doing Diablo Immortal, then we're doing Diablo 2, because we also want to in the future be able to take our release of Diablo 2 Resurrected, and then it'll be easier to port that into a cell phone game in the future that we can include microtransactions in. Maybe you're right. Maybe that is the path, because it is much easier after you've brought a game to current standard. It is then much easier to, from a current standard, port it. So maybe that is the game plan, or maybe we're being too cynical. The not full effort is probably the appeal of grinding, yeah, though I think at the same time, grind has the issue of finding a middle ground. It does, and I think there was a middle ground that was comfortable with games like Diablo 2 that has now the tolerance of it because it got overused is lower. Personal belief. And I don't mind some grinding. Like, I don't mind some grinding. Again, I liked my Diablo 2. I liked my PSO. I've liked, RPGs where you can go, hey, let's grind up to go get people's ultimate weapons, even though we don't need them to go beat the final boss, that kind of thing. Genshin Impact, yeah, that's what I was looking for. Temporal was playing that before coming into today's stream. No, Temporal was meeting with people for breakfast before coming into today's stream, but good try. Uh, didn't you need GameSpy or something on release with D2? Um, on release, no. You needed something when people were playing. My last real experience playing Diablo 2 was before Diablo 3 came out. I went and did a quick tour through it, and you needed to use something to get onto the appropriate BattleNet servers to be able to play with other people. You could play with yourself, but linking up with other people to play with, you had to use some outside source that wasn't hard to get, but you had to use something to do it. I'm sure removing that hurdle will get more people playing it if it hasn't already been removed. Barrett back off to move between characters, move items between characters for 100 hours. Just use an editor. It's whatever it did. And debugs. Yeah, that's fair. People still play WoW. Yeah, the classic release of WoW was quite successful. The retail stuff for WoW has been hit or miss, where they've had bad expansions and they've had good expansions. But yeah, there are still people out there playing WoW. They haven't told us what the numbers are in forever, but there's definitely still people out there playing WoW. And the classic release did get a newer audience to have an excuse to go check out WoW as well, which, do what you will with that. I mean, to be fair, people watching on Twitch isn't the same as playing. That's absolutely true. Some games are more watched than played, I think. A lot of the quick fad games like Among Us or Fall Guys are like that. That's true, but it's the best metric I have because companies don't release their how much interaction, how much playtime they've had, how many unique users they've had, or if they do, they don't tell us really what that means. Whereas your new unique user, they spent another $10 on another copy of Overwatch, or is your unique user, they actually signed in and played from a different IP address with a new thing of Overwatch, or what is it? Like, they don't give us good transferable information, so the thing that is sort of the most transferable and the best standard I have, unless you have a better one, in some situations becomes, okay, what does Twitch watching look like? And even that's not perfect because game streaming isn't all centralized on Twitch anymore. We're seeing, well, we saw some competitors that failed, though we still see YouTube is in the play as we stream here on YouTube and talk about video games. They need to jump on the RT bandwagon before it goes the way of the of 3D Blu-rays. Yeah. And then we have Turbovoltaic is buying it because they never finished 2 when it was out. Like Temp said, it's hard to play right now. I never played 3 and want to play first 2, so I'll buy the bundle. That's fair. I think it'll be fun. I just think this game's appeal was never really a you're once through it and done type thing. It's not really that type of game, though it's fine if you want to play it that way. in its era, this game was really you go through it and then you keep grinding their equivalent of Inferno mode until you go, hey, I'm going to stack a bunch of magic find gear. I'm going to kill the Act 3, the Act 4 bosses, the Act 5 bosses repeatedly to get more MF gear, to get MF being magic find, to get, okay, more, to get better gear that'll then make my gear that I can defeat the boss even faster with that doesn't have magic find on it. Like, it was sort of a loop like that. But hey, Path of Exile seems to be doing fine, even with. That's true. Path of Exile is a great counter argument. Seems to be doing fine, even with repeating seasons and restarts. The entire grind. We'll see if Activision is the same kind of monetization, though. Yeah, that is actually a really good point. Path of Exile is doing fantastic in that niche. It seems to be something that there was some level of hunger for. So it will be a question. Will this pull away from Path of Exile? Because based on what I saw, based on what I see here, there's not enough to make me believe that, yes, we're going to, like, some Path of Exile people will come check it out, but what Path of Exile is doing with their restarting seasons is really more of a direct competitor to Diablo 3, I'd say. And by say direct competitor, I mean it's beaten Diablo 3, I would expect. But hey, that's a fair point, though. Mm-hmm. Ray tracing. You can get some of the game stats from Steam, some of them, yeah. Again, I'm not saying it's the only source that we have for these things, but none of the sources are great on this stuff. You have to sort of use a combination of sources. Dude, I keep missing the start of your streams, not getting the notifications apparently. Well, Nick G, are you getting the notifications by tagging the bell on YouTube? Because you can certainly do that, but I find both on Twitch and on YouTube trying to get notifications from their platforms directly tends to be like, maybe it will, maybe it won't send out the notifications. Maybe it'll be 10 or 15 minutes after start time, maybe it won't. The best way to get notifications is to go to my Discord, and in Get Notifications, that's a channel, you can react to get the watcher roll, and that will specifically get you a Discord ping, and Discord pings are much more reliable time-wise for when I actually start these streams. You're not reliable on Discord. Okay. You just did the hit the bell thing. Okay, well, you can hit the bell thing, but I can't make YouTube better at that, unfortunately. I've solved this as best I can with the watcher role in the Discords, but yes, YouTube's solution to this is the bell, and as every YouTuber will tell you, it's a little hit or miss. PoE adds fairly unique things to each challenge league, though. Yes, and again, based on what I'm seeing here, maybe there's going to be more for us, but based on what I'm seeing here, it doesn't look like it's going to get that level of ongoing support. And none of Blizzard's remakes have gotten that level of ongoing support, to be clear. The StarCraft remake didn't. The Warcraft 3 remake most certainly didn't. The WoW remakes got some support, but really not much. So I would like the level of support that would be necessary for, hey, we're doing seasons with unique things that happen in the seasons. Oh, it's harvests in this season. Oh, it's escape or rob armories or whatever in this season. I'm not seeing any evidence that we're going to get that, though maybe. Okay, just click on Temporal's channel and refresh every few minutes. There you go. There you go. And maybe watch 3 different videos from my archive of more than 500 videos now. Just watch 3 of them at once while you're at it. Just waiting in case I go live. No, okay. More seriously. Okay. And then Blah says he's not going to buy Diablo 2 remade. Okay. So that really covers what I want to do here. I'll give you guys another moment to comment if you want so we can further explore this, but that sort of sums up my initial thoughts. I'll probably take a look at it because I'll have friends taking a look at it. But again, I don't personally think this is going to make sense as more than a quick sort of 30-hour, 40-hour one-time through, grind a little bit, quickly get bored type thing, which for a video game, that's okay. That's okay. That's not like terrible, but that's not amazing. That's not amazing for the type of game that this is. Like, when it comes to gaming, when it comes to online games like this, you're really expecting to sink more time into them than that. Okay, letting you have that there for comments. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do like and subscribe, as that helps me out quite a bit, and I really do appreciate that. Or if you're looking to get Overwatch coaching, since that's the thing we do on this channel, please do like and subscribe down below there, as that helps out. Okay. Is Blizzard somewhat worried about starting a new IP? Kind of feels like they keep trying to do remakes consistently. Well, remakes or not, they've always been hesitant to do, maybe not always, but they've been hesitant to do new IPs for a long time. Like, we've been running with the yellow, red, blue IPs for a long time. This has been Blizzard for quite a while now, for a couple decades, really. Like, what is Hearthstone? Well, Hearthstone actually belongs in this. What is what do you call it? Their Keepers of the Storm? That's not what it's called. Is it? What is their MOBA? Well, their MOBA is a combination of these. Like, you know, and then they moved from Warcraft 3, which was an RTS, into WoW, but it's still Warcraft. Like, they haven't really. Overwatch was the first new IP, the first actual new IP we'd seen out of Blizzard in a long time. Um, so yeah, yeah, I would say they are afraid to start a new IP. And I understand that. They're not the only thing in the entertainment world that's afraid to start a new IP. You guys have seen Hollywood has gone completely we're not doing anything unless there's an existing audience for it. We will happily remake something that there's a very small audience for, but we're not willing to go in here on a fresh thing. We want something that there is some built-in safe existence audience for, rather than just trusting the writers. Which is understandable. They're big investments, both in Hollywood and in video games. But I don't like that. I would like to see a new IP. Um, Overwatch certainly worked well enough for them to justify them trying again at another new IP. We should have a temporal video stream challenge. Whoever can watch the most temporal videos at once wins. I like it. I like it. Should I play comp when am ill, or is that throwing too much? I mean, it's up to you. Ultimately, what do you want to get out of the game? If you want to win as many games as possible or get to as high a rank as possible, no, you shouldn't. On the other hand, we have different goals that we're getting out of games. Some people are playing games to get better. Some people are playing games just to unwind, and that's grinding, for example, fits better into that category. And if you're playing a competitive game to unwind, you're just going to treat it as less competitive, which is fine if that's how you want to enjoy your game, but you're not going to. But if your goal is to get the max SR or play at the highest level, then you're going to be hurting yourself a little on the way doing that. Are we going to move to an Overwatch review next? Yes, we are. Heroes of the Storm. Okay, there we go. I think they call Heroes of the Storm a strategy and keep it in the StarCraft Veil. I think it incorporated stuff from all of their IPs, right? But either way, you can see that they're not actually. These have been their core three for ages, and then they added Overwatch. And which isn't to say that they hadn't done any games before these three brands. Like, they had done other stuff. If you go back to the actual WoW, or not the actual WoW, the actual Blizzard Classic archive, you can see that they did like a Vikings game, etc. They've done other stuff before this, but they've mostly been, nope, we're playing in this world for a couple decades now until Overwatch. I think the fear of starting I get the fear of starting new IPs, but it's definitely a thing where I'd say they've likely got a declining audience. I don't know. I mean, yes, there's a declining audience, but everyone hears from the people older than them about how great this game was, from their older brother, their older sister, about how great Diablo 2 was, and so they go, okay, maybe I do want to check that out, which is part of what'll make a re-release successful. So I don't know. Or like, or Final Fantasy would be a great example of that, where it's like, oh, we're going on to Final Fantasy 15, 16, whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, well, I heard about how great Final Fantasy was. Well, this, you're getting new players for these games. Like, you're actually getting new players for these games, which is wild, because they heard from previous people about how good FF7 or 10 or whatever it was, and they're like, oh, well, I've heard that these things were good, but I wasn't around. I wasn't playing on those systems back then, so I'll check out this one and be disappointed. So it still works. But yes, there's a declining audience. There's only so much you can keep doing with remakes before you either start alienating the original game's audience. We're well past that on a lot of franchise. We're not bringing a new audience. On a side note, I'm very happy Overwatch came about. Team Fortress 2 is extremely fun, but it's been abandoned by Valve except for, yeah, that's fair. They do have a declining audience by their own numbers in their earnings announcements. Yes, we did cover that here on the channel. That you guys can go check on the channel for that. We saw their drop off in engagement, significant. It was like 27 to 33% or something in that range. Final Fantasy is actually terrifying, to be honest. I hear they're good, but I see like 15 games and have no clue where to start. Well, we can answer that for you right now. They're mostly non-sequential games, and the games that people generally consider to be the best are going to be, it'll vary from person to person, but people like 7, people like 10, people like 6, people like 4, and if someone's answer isn't one of these 4, you politely but firmly tell them that they're wrong. Let me rephrase that. Their MMO is also fine. Their modern MMO is also fine, which was, 14? So you could go with that, I suppose. Different type of game completely, but that's fine. If their answer isn't one of these, you politely but firmly tell them they're wrong. And then mostly past 10, they went downhill, with the exception of their MMO or their successful MMO. 11 had success for a while, but 14's better. Yes, I know some people hate me for that statement. Okay. Started FF1, play them all. If you started FF1, you won't keep playing. If people go back and try to play FF1, FF1's a fine game, but what you run into there is it is old enough that you won't have enough quality of life enjoyment things that'll just make it, if you don't have nostalgia goggles to help you or don't have a love of the franchise to help you, you will not get through a game with bad graphics, no voice acting, no cutscenes, like having to grind, random battles that perhaps, trigger too often or not often enough. Like if you go to too old of a game and that game itself wasn't a gem, you will struggle. Even if you could have enjoyed that game quite nicely if you'd first played a 10 or a 6 or whatever the case may be. You're not hardcore unless you play them all. You'll probably only like what Temporal wrote, though. Yeah, yeah. I think there's other ones that are okay in here. Like, I think these are the good ones, but, like, I was perfectly fine with 8 and 9, for example. I don't think they're as good as these. And, some people liked 11. 12 had its place, but was definitely a decline. And we really haven't seen a good story-based Final Fantasy since 10. Okay, that's going to do it. We will go ahead and go do some of our more normal review stuff after this, but I wanted to cover the topic since it was here. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Temporal out.